Yeah. So you fit perfectly within exactly what I'm doing.
Terrific. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah. But so before we get into your life as a
Mhm.
freelance designer and all of the things that you do on a daily basis, I want to begin with this. I know we're getting tired of talking about COVID, but it was such a big deal for all of us. How did you ultimately survive that time period, and how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Well, I was actually fortunate because during COVID I had a state job. I was working for the Florida Department of Transportation at the time.
Yeah,
But we worked from home doing a lot of work. We were busy the entire time because of a lot of the issues with transportation and COVID. But I started to realize I wanted to get I got a taste of working from home and working for myself. And from there, I started to form this idea of going out on my own, striking out on my own. And it took another job after that to see what my niche was and what I really wanted to do, which turned out to be presentation design. Um, so I know a lot of people had a lot of issues with finding jobs during COVID, but it seemed pretty okay for a lot of people in the presentation design industry. They didn't have a rough time getting new jobs, thankfully.
well, yeah, because I think that was the key to COVID was that, there was always this thing where you had to actually physically be on site, but we
Mhm.
realized that most of the world could actually be remote. We could connect and we can get things done.
And I think it's still I'm noticing a lot of still virtual webinars going on. It
Yeah,
hasn't it entered a whole new venue for people to really connect and get a line together. It's
for sure.
a lot easier than getting half the country, half your company to come across the country.
Uh-huh. Yep, it certainly is. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do now in 2024 on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I used to say I make PowerPoints and people would roll their eyes. So what I do is I come in and I typically my clients have a top problem telling their story. And they want to do this through a slide deck because usually that's what's required in a business setting or for an interview setting. So they have an idea, they want to tell something, but they don't know how to tell that story. So where I come in is I create a story based off of their mission, what they want to sell, if they want to pitch some money, or if they want to put on an event and inspire action to their staff. What we do is we start to create a story. We story block it out, and we get this foundation. From there, we spin it out and we turn it into slides. And each slide, we find the takeaway we want to impart on the audience. And then the final thing, what I came into this doing was designing. So that's the final thing we do. After we get our story down, after we get our takeaways, after we get all these strong assets and all this data in there, then we go and polish it and make it look really pretty and astounding. So I think having a beautiful presentation goes a long way with your audience. So they're not bored, but also having a story, something for them to listen to. It makes a world of difference. And I think people retain more information when you entertain them and bring them on a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Comic book artist. I wanted to be a
Okay.
comic book artist. Yeah, I love Spider-Man. I would trace like all the Spider-Man comics I had, and
Yeah.
that's where I got into art, and then that's just kind of turned into design over time.
I went to Comic-Con here in Kansas City about 5 or 6 years ago. My son loves it. He loves taking pictures with everybody and all of that. I could
Mhm.
swear there was a dude there that was like I could swear it was Stan Lee. And I think he was acting like he was just impersonating, but I could just swear it was him.
He was probably
It,
cosplaying as Stan Lee.
yeah, right. And I was a comic book kid growing
Uh,
up, so I love all that. It was just, every Tuesday the new comics or the first Tuesday of the month, something like that. Yeah. And
yep, I was there day one. Had my pull
that
file ready to go.
yep, absolutely. I remember one of the most profound comics I ever read was a Spider-Man about a kid that had leukemia.
I remember that one. Yeah,
Do you? Yeah,
I
that
do.
thing just went right to my core.
Right.
But
That's what I love about. I know we're getting off subject here, but that's why I
yeah,
love comic books because it can really speak to the human element.
yeah.
Movies don't. They can really like tell a story that is so fine and granular about a little boy. That yeah, comics are magic.
But that's the thing that's so weird about being an adult at this point with our collective age is that the comic book characters have saved Hollywood. Who would have thought that those would be the fodder for making all these movies?
Never, never in a million years. I
No
remember as a
way.
fan cast, we think like it'd be awesome to see this, and now
Yeah,
you can't
it's
you can't get tape it now.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So let's go back to your childhood. Tell me where you were born and raised and how these elements of design and becoming a freelancer and just all these things that have developed and evolved into who you are. How did this happen?
Well, I remember spending summers, just drawing and tracing. At first, it was tracing, and then I started learning how to draw. And I went through school and college. I mean, and sorry, in high school, I was all in art class all the time. I love figure drawing. I love painting. That translated to college as well, and I went for studio art when I originally started going to college. But as I was there, I think this was late 90s, early 2000s. I started becoming more aware of vector graphics and Adobe Creative Suite, and this whole world of design opened up to me that I never experienced before, and I was enamored. So I kind of switched my major over to design. And it was a little rough in the beginning because I didn't have the background on it as much as I did fine art, but it was a kind of, it was also a smooth transition. It didn't take long to start really understanding the design elements. From there, I got a job with the state of Florida doing design for, I was like actually a secretary, but they wanted somebody that could do annual report designs. So I started designing annual reports and newspapers that we had for elder affairs. So yeah, it was really cool. I learned how to do print design first, how to do offset printing, working with printers. And from there, it kind of spun off into social media, websites, logos. But then it got to a point, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I was doing all these logos and sites, and people were asking me to do this stuff, and I felt kind of overwhelmed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I really, I discovered this wonderful lady, Adrienne Johnston, and she does presentation designs. And we talked in great length about really niching down and finding a really focused niche that I like. So that was presentation design because at my current my last job, we were making presentations every week, and that's all I did was presentations. And I saw how powerful and how desired they were from the C-suite um, to corporations. I've worked with some startups as well that their whole sales pitch is, the cornerstone is that presentation. They use it to spin off so many different pieces of asset that they use. It really can be like a cornerstone to your strategy, your marketing strategy. You
Yeah.
can pull out information, social media, website information. It's been eye-opening to see how powerful these things are to the workforce.
So who's been an inspiration? Who's been a hero for you in your life?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I wasn't expecting that right there. Wow. I'm a big fan of Chris Do. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He does the Future podcast. He's a
Okay.
great designer, and he talks to a lot of other freelancers out there about how they can make their lives better by really niching down, finding their purpose, being better at sales. That's a big thing with designers. You learn how to design, you learn how to do the storytelling, but you have a hard time with the sales part. So that's been a journey right there too, because it's a completely different side of your brain you have to access as
Yeah.
opposed to the right side.
So if you could sit down and talk to the guy that invented PowerPoint and give him some practical, or he or she, I don't know exactly who did it, and give them some practical pointers with your acumen and experience in the program, that it would be rerouted to work perfectly for you, what would you tell them?
That's funny. I think that's like a point of contention with a lot of designers. I would love to see more Pro Tools in it.
Yeah.
More, and I mean by Pro Tools, more, I'd like to zoom past 400%, for instance. I would
Yeah.
like to be able to control how wide my text is, things that Adobe does. But I understand why they do what they do because they want it to be accessible to everybody. It's
Yeah.
not meant for pros. It's meant to be on your desktop and for all workers to have access to, which is something I love about PowerPoint because it is accessible. It's the most accessible presentation software there is. If
Yeah.
I send you a PowerPoint, you can open it. Almost everybody in America can open it or across the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I would love to see these changes implemented, but I understand the need for accessibility. Plus, there's add-ons you can add on to the in the background to make those Pro Tools become a reality. Um, and I'd like to also say I think Microsoft's come a long way because PowerPoint was not useful at all 20 years ago. I don't know if you remember that at all. It
Oh, yeah.
was hard to use.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was so bad, but they've added so many cool things, especially in
Yeah.
the past year. So I think it's getting a lot better.
I was in desktop publishing when I got out of school. That was my first foray. And I remember, man, what was it, PageMaker and all these programs that have gone
Yep.
away. But I remember I would do PowerPoints and travel with architects. After I did home health, I went into architecture and engineering. And so I'm curious, I've had a lot of experience, and I say that because I've had a lot of experience with it. What has been one of the favorite PowerPoints that you constructed? Something that you had to come up with, maybe a design or the way it interacted. Is there one that stands out?
This summer, I got the pleasure of working with the fine folks at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I was working with their go-to-marketing operations team, and every year they put on a their big annual kickoff for their sales year. And so I got to work with their go-to-marketing ops team, and it was very space themed. And at first, when I turned it in, it was very conservative. I was really trying to stick with their branding. And they're like, no, we want you to really push this. So I had stars and rockets and like spaceships all over the place. And it came out so cool. I wish I could share it with you. But I had, they were talking about all their sales, and I really tried to integrate that with the theme of the future foundation, pushing off into space and exploring. So everything involved like these globes and spaceships, and there was a lot of animation in between each one. So it was probably the most complex one I've ever done, but it came out stellar. People loved it, and I had a blast doing it. Plus, we got to go to Vegas and visit and be on site for that one. So that was a real fun gig right there.
That's awesome.
So,
So, yeah, no, that's totally cool. So let me ask you this.
mhm.
What is your motivation to continue to push yourself to design and to be better and to evolve as a human being? What gets you up every day to do that?
My motivation, that's a good question. I like to better myself personally. I believe in constantly learning and education. But the real one is my daughter. Like I do this all so I can just I feel like she made me a better man when she was born. So I feel like every day I get up and look at her and I think I'm gonna go out there and make a difference today. Between those two, I like to push myself.
So this is kind of a new career for you. You had a career before, and I'm
Mhm.
curious if, speaking of youth with your daughter, if you had a dream tonight and you ran into a younger version of you, an 18-year-old version, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you impart on your young version?
I would, man, that's a great question. I think about this often. I would tell them how to learn how to tell a story. I
Yeah.
think that's hugely important these days. Everything is so visual on your social media sites. You're just flicking through your feed nonstop. If you can arrest somebody for a minute and capture their attention with a good story, a good foundational narrative, I think you're solid. Another thing, a friend just asked this actually the other day. I would learn how to market yourself. I would learn how to market yourself online, how to post social media, to reach out and do cold calls or cold emails, to get on podcasts, to put yourself out there. Um, Being a designer is great, but you're going to have to really do a lot of self marketing to put yourself out there and be successful in it. Especially with AI coming into the play, a
Yeah.
lot of people are going to take shortcuts, I think. So having an authentic designer who is not afraid to push themselves out there is, I think, is going to be gold.
Who's your favorite storyteller of all time?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hmm. I'm gonna have to pass on that one for right now. I cannot think of sorry. I'm a big fan of Fight Club. I thought Chuck Palahniuk did a
Oh, yeah.
terrific job with Fight Club. That book was phenomenal. The
Yeah.
movie was better.
Yeah. It's such a great concept because sometimes I'll see groups that are kind of on the fringe that meet, and I always think about Polnick because that was his whole thing. He'd always go to some kind of self-help group, and it's
Yeah.
wild. What a great idea.
He saw the zeitgeist of what was happening in our culture
Uh-huh.
like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
He nailed it.
Well, it's weird. I was last night referencing with my wife that movie Mike Judge made, Idiocracy, where,
Yes.
they came back and they were like, what happened? And it's happening right now.
Our former president was a wrestler at one point. He was on WWE. You can't
Yeah,
make
I
this.
I know it's wild, man. All of it's just like what and that's the thing. Sometimes I like to ask people, is real life stranger than fiction? And I think it is. I think that just being alive and watching the narrative unravel is just crazy.
One of my favorite anecdotes for that movie was I believe Mike Judge was looking for the stupidest footwear he could
Yeah.
find in the movie.
Yeah.
Somebody introduced him to Crocs. Like, okay, we'll put everybody in Crocs. And they predicted the future right there.
He did. Totally did. So at the end of the day, of everything that you've done and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Oh man, I'm proudest of being a father. Like my daughter's like my world right there. I'm proud of I'm proud of pushing myself and getting out there. I'm 46 years old. I've been dreaming about doing this for a long time, and I took the plunge finally in the past couple of years to get out there and make a name for myself. Um, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm grateful for everything that's happened and the people I've met along the way too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. When you get to this point in your life, it's almost a little bit sweeter, and it proves that point that it's never too late to dream and to do what you want to do.
I agree. I look to those inspirational stories like the Colonel, KFC. I don't
Yeah.
think he's in his 60s, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
exactly. Uh-huh. Yeah.
so
So,
success. Never give up, never stop. Like I'm gonna be 85 years old and not I can't imagine retiring. You know what I mean?
yeah, I agree. I
I will
agree.
always want to be curious about something and
Yeah,
doing something.
that's it, growth. So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that's known you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I have a mission and I want to accomplish it. And I get in my head and I'll stay up late at night until I get that mission accomplished. So I'm very mission driven. I want to make sure that my clients are happy and I worry about it. I get to a point where I want to make sure that they have everything that they need at the end of our contract. So that's me. I want to please my clients. I want to drive my mission and I want to feel accomplished in this career.
So, if anyone wants to hire you, reach out, learn more, any of the good business, where do they go?
Sure. You can visit my website. It's jqscreates.com. You can also email me. It's timj@jqscreates.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Timothy Jacques. Please reach out, connect. I'd love to talk to you about anything I can help with.
Wonderful. This is a great surprise. What a great election day conversation. Thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
You too. Hey, Joe, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this. It's been great.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. My pleasure. Take care.